Thank you very much for that, Lisa. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining me today, and thank you all for attending the conference overall this weekend. And along with Lisa and Eva, I want to thank my mad thanks to the entire Canadian Stutter Associations for making this year's conference so successful so far. Well, so successful. I'm sure it will be successful later. So as you may know, I'm here to speak about my journey as a sports writer who stutters. I love various sports, like I still do hockey, baseball, football. I love hockey mostly. Predominantly read about that, but I've written some tennis as well. So like years I loved hockey ever since I was maybe 3 or 4. But honestly, I was never much of an athlete. In fact, when other kids my age and even younger were so fluid in their skating, I was the polar opposite. I mean, I haven't worn a pair of skates in years, so yeah. So that gives you an idea of my lack thereof athletic prowess. But you know what? Like, like I never played at competitive level, and and I was never a good player. So I mean, I wasn't kidding myself. Unlike a lot of kids, I mean, I didn't dream of playing in the NHL or at any professional level, but I knew I loved hockey and loved sports. So and I did want to channel that love and passion in a different way. Now, after writing, I mean, I started writing when I was like maybe 5 or 6. Now, granted, that juncture wasn't like anything eloquent. It was just like it was just like one-line little journal entries. But nevertheless, I use writing as a channel to express myself. And over the years, I've written a multitude of different ways, like stories, some screenplays, journal entries, and even some poems and songs. Although the latter two, I mean, that interest was brief, as I was never very good at poetry or songwriting. The other forms of writing, however, I did thoroughly enjoy, but then conversely, I remember watching sports, like whether it's like tennis with my mom or hockey or baseball with my dad or my brothers, and really enjoying the nuances of those sports, but others as well. So, for instance, like I would be constantly asking about the rules of the game. What does a deuce mean in tennis? What's an offside in hockey? What constitutes a first down in football? Like the list goes on. And strangely enough, as far as my memory serves me, I wouldn't stutter when asking so many questions. It's like, now granted, I was still young, so stuttering was relatively new to me, but regardless, it wasn't much of an issue when I was talking or asking about sports, like being introduced to it. Now, I'm originally from St. John's, Newfoundland. And in addition, long before I had a stutter, well, here, let me say it. Most babies come out with their head first. Yeah, I came out with my bum first, so I was, so my spine was a bit twisted at birth, and um, and in Newfoundland, there was at the time very little medical attention available. I don't know if it was not available in general or just for cases like me, but the extent of my medical attention in St. John's, I saw a doctor maybe once every 6 months, and and even those twice a year appointments, they weren't always the most productive. So even though I had learned to walk, like when I lived in Newfoundland, I did have a considerably more trouble than normal. And it was actually when I was 3, we actually visited my uncle in Toronto, and it was at St. Margaret's Hospital downtown. Where I was diagnosed with the cerebral palsy, and actually, while we were in Toronto, my dad had applied for a job in Ottawa because he worked for the federal government, and him and my mother had lived in Ottawa years earlier. And yeah, and when we got back to home in St. John's, my dad had a letter on the table saying that he had been accepted for the transfer, and because both my parents are Newfoundland natives, and it was a difficult decision, but they decided to leave. To give me more medical attention in Ottawa, and other family reasons as well. But yeah, we moved to Ottawa shortly after I turned 3, and I was at the Ottawa Children's Treatment Center about 4 times a week. So I went from once every 6 months to about 16 times a month. For the record, that's the fastest I've ever done math. So but like and in that sense, I was getting a lot better, but also the treatment center, I started seeing a speech therapist. However, it wasn't because I stuttered. I didn't develop a stutter for another couple of years. Basically, like I would talk to my mom and my brothers, but unfortunately, I'm just so shy and nervous. I wouldn't speak to anyone else. So this is why I started seeing a speech therapist initially, and I saw that speech therapist for a year, and I eventually started coming out of my shell. But a couple years later in kindergarten, I remember a speech therapist coming to see me for a stutter, and it was just strange to me because I didn't know that like there's anything wrong, for lack of a better term. But we had our first session because I trust the teacher. The teacher said, "Well, you can go," And we had our first session, and the speech therapist said, very encouraging, like saying that was really good. And I mean, I was happy but confused because I didn't know anything was wrong. But but over the next few years, my speech, my stuttering rather, got a lot more noticeable. And like I don't know when or how it started, but my stutter, what started out as something minor and non-existent even, turned into something major. And I mean, throughout school, mostly elementary and junior high, I had such a difficult and frustrating time to speak. And you know, and kids in school, not all, but some, really didn't make it any easier. You know, I'm sure we can all relate to this on one level or another. You know, there'd be kids who would like tease and mock me, bully me, and even though not all the kids were like this, the kids that that were particularly mean or jerks, it wore on me. And I mean, the bullying took such a negative toll on me that I reverted to my 3-4-year-old self, where I was too shy or too afraid even to say anything because I knew that I might stutter. So I just resorted not to talking. I mean, this is something that has negatively affected my life well into adulthood. Like, for instance, missing out on key opportunities, whether academically, socially, or professionally, all because I said to myself, what if I stutter and back out? Now going back to sports, I remember like watching sports and following, you know, my favorite team. You know, it was more or less an escape for me. I eventually became my favorite hockey team became the Los Angeles Kings. Although when I was really young, I helped cheer on my dad and his Detroit Red Wings, who at the time weren't very good. So so believe it or not, I had a great amount of sympathy for my dad because he was always disappointed. So I didn't want to make him feel alone. But and that's right. Just like you know, since I did what I could to avoid speaking situations, I decided to write more and express myself more in different ways. The ways I mentioned. I mean, like as a young adult, I had considerable trouble, like figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. And I mean, I thought of so many different options, but a few of them really appealed to me. And at that juncture, probably my early 20s, I hadn't written much, but I still loved watching sports. And then one day, maybe 15 years ago, I found this weekly sports talk show on TSN. It's called The Reporters, where a panel of 4 sports writers or reporters would discuss the hottest topics in sports that week and finish off the episode with a parting shot segment, which was a monologue from each. And there was just something about this last segment that spoke to me. It's like, excuse me, it was just something very eloquent, articulate about about the way they spoke, about how they and just explain the story in great detail, and just And yeah, and I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm going to tune in each week, and even if I only see the last segment, I'm happy with that because I love this segment. There's something about it that really speaks to me. And my other favorite team, the Boston Red Sox baseball. I had begun my own blog on MySpace, which was briefly popular in the mid 2000s, and I enjoyed that. But I basically just wrote my opinions, and most of it was just like maybe a paragraph, if that. And but even after MySpace faded in popularity, I always found ways and avenues to keep writing. At a journal, for instance, I would just write about a specific game that broke my heart, or player I could live almost vicariously through, and just write about them. I mean, I wrote these pieces informally, obviously, but I remember in 2007 or 8, back when Facebook first hit the mainstream, Facebook had a section at the time called Notes, where you just open it and you just write whatever you want. And so I saw this and decided, like you know what, the way the reporters had that resonate with me with the articulation of the speakers, I decided to try it myself and pick any topic and just write about my own feelings, but add like emotional aspect to it. So so one day I decided to write one, share it, and a couple days later I wrote another, and so on and so forth. And then and then little by little I got more attention from these pieces. A couple of my friends admitted they read them religiously, and one even asked who by coincidence is also a person who stutters. He asked me if I've ever thought about a career in journalism, and at that juncture I honestly hadn't. I'd gone away to college for a year the previous year for web development, and the program just didn't work out. I knew it wasn't anything I wanted to do, so I was kind of not in a dark place, but I was certainly at a crossroads at that time. And no, but others reading my stuff and their words of encouragement, that really did help. It tipped the scale in a way. I mean, I was really on a roll, and probably, at the risk of sounding melodramatic, I was probably doing something I was really confident in for the first time in my life. And I remember I just kept going and on the Facebook notes. And then in early 2010, this was about a week before the Vancouver Olympics were about to start, and someone I never spoke to. He was from a startup sports journalism platform. He reached out to me and saw that I was an LA Kings fan, hockey, and asked if I'd be interested in writing about them for the site. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people feel this way, um, but when you get a message on Facebook from someone you've never spoken to, there's some flattery, but there's also some reticence with that, where it's like, you know, yeah, I'm interested in principle, uh, uh, but I want to talk and get to know the person before I commit to anything. So that's exactly what we did. We spoke for about a week or so, and then I accepted. I mean, I had written some informal blog posts here and there about the Kings, but never on a regular basis. So for the next few months and the next few years, I've wrote about the Kings on a very regular basis. And it garnered enough attention that I even got to cover some major events. Yeah. Um, uh, Jazz the Stanley Cup final in 2013. Now, and it was in one of my favorite cities in the world, Boston, Massachusetts, which, as I said, is home to my favorite baseball team, the Red Sox. And just the feeling, all the events I covered were special. Don't get me wrong, but to cover the Stanley Cup final, it's like for someone who had followed hockey or the NHL since he was about 4 or 5 years old, to get to cover arguably the biggest event in the league and in the sport was really a dream come true. And and just making my way out to Pearson Airport in Toronto to catch a flight down to Boston. It was like I had never taken a trip where I was so excited, and it was just, and I mean, words can't even describe how amazing it was. And Boston, the city itself, the marathon bombing, unfortunately, was just a couple months earlier. So, so just the range of emotion and resilience that swept through that city during that time, it was really something special. And I just had a wonderful time. I went to Fenway Park where the Red Sox play for the first time ever, and just had an amazing time. And yeah, professionally and even personally, it was it was one of the greatest times in my life. And I think about it with great fondness today, and I'll think about it with great fondness 20 years from now. So that was wonderful. Well, I do apologize. I went on a bit of a digression there. But as much as I loved what was happening, as much as I love my writing, it came to a point where my style of writing has sort of run its course. I was writing a lot of opinion and observational pieces, which I enjoyed, and I still do. But I wanted to try something new. And I really wanted to try getting original quotes from my articles and conducting interviews. However, to do that, I'd have to interview others. And unless they were in town, I had to speak with them over the phone. And as I'm sure many people who stutter can relate to, speaking on the phone is just just one of those things I've tried at all costs to avoid. But so how I would start? Because I mean, technology was still good, but I mean, not emails. So I started there, and but around this time, my day job, I was working at a job during the week where I woke up at 4 a.m. So on weekends, I'd voluntarily be up around that time. So when I woke up, even when the sun was rising, I would just write up an email template, who I am, what I'm looking for, and of course a forewarning about my stuttering. And since I've written about the Kings so much, I decided to send interview requests to as many in the Kings organizations as I could. Probably 5 or 10. There are more, but I don't want to overdo it. So via email, I sent these interview requests to those people, and somebody wrote back, happy to speak with me and more than understanding about my stutter. Many even offered to exchange questions and answers via email, which was helpful. I appreciate that, but email interviews, I have since veered away from them for a few reasons. One, while it's no fault of the interviewer, many only offer maybe 2 or 3 sentences, where on the phone, they can offer you a paragraph or 2 of material. Two, as far as emotion or tone, you can't really account that or read that as well in emails. 3, email interviews take away from the spontaneity, the surprise factor, if you will, of a question. So, like, so if I want to ask a really tough question, it'd be great to get on the phone because they have almost a snap decision to answer. Whereas email, that they can sit behind their computer or stand in front of their phone and take the time to really think and process it and respond whenever they can. And fourth, most importantly, email interviews are helpful, but especially as a person who stutters, it is counterproductive. And that was the key thing. It's like, email interviews are easy, but if you want to attain any substantial goals, it's not going to be easy anyway. And especially as a person who stutters, because I want to get my story out, but I also want to get in the habit of speaking and speaking fluidly. I'm going to have trouble, obviously, but I'm not going to get anywhere if I don't try. So with that in mind, what could I do to change this? I thought, I was very negative. I was like, use the phone. Like, it felt like such a chore. It's like, do I have to? And for a while, I did resort to just not using the phone and reverted to my original writing style with no interviews. But then there was a point in my life, 2016, to be more specific, where I was between jobs, and I'll be honest, I was in a dark place. Just a lot of depression and anger going on in my life as well, because of the circumstances. But the LA Kings were approaching their 50th anniversary season, the golden anniversary. So I wanted to do an interview series to coincide with that milestone. Now, at first, I dismissively said to myself, well, too bad I stutter. Yeah, good riddance for that mindset. My brother, who was also a longtime Kings fan and who has also been my biggest fan with my writing, always encouraging me to try new things and apply to different platforms. He had suggested something like a voice synthesizer because both my brother and I love movies, and we knew about the late movie critic Roger Ebert and how he used a voice synthesizer due to his cancer towards the end of his life. Now, I looked into these and the prices, and I couldn't afford one, so that wasn't an option. But this time I didn't revert to I stutter. Instead, it got me thinking. Now, I did try an app where a computerized voice read my questions, and I did try this with a few interviews. But in all honesty, it sounded very impersonal, and to like the email interviews, it was counterproductive because I wasn't speaking. So then, about a day or two later, I remembered that whenever I pick up the phone, I spoke more fluently when there was no one on the other end. That, coupled with remembering the scene in the Colin Firth movie, The King's Speech, where he recites the poem fluently while listening to classical music on his headphones. This gave me a new way to ask questions on the phone. I figured, well, it's 2016. The old adage, "There's an app for that," was very accurate because there was even at that time an app for pretty much anything, I guess. Yeah. So what I tried to do, there was an app on my laptop, and I decided to put some classic instrumental music on and recite the questions into the app, and then when I'm on the phone, play the questions. Because of what was going on with my depression, anger, and my kind of hopelessness, I guess, at the time, I was admittedly having trouble speaking. And my friend Paul, who would come over a lot, I was so frustrated. I said, "Oh, Paul, can you do this?" And because I can't. And Paul, to his immense credit, just encouraged me to keep trying and do it all day if I had to. And sometimes it took me a couple hours, so so he wasn't far off. Yeah. So but you know what? With Paul's encouragement, I kept at it, and ultimately decided to take the next step and try. My first interview, from what I remember, was an overall success. So was my next one, and the next one after that. And at first, I wanted to interview 50 former Kings players, and I dismissively thought to myself, "Yeah, good luck with that. I'm not going to get that many." Lo and behold, I did, and granted, there are a few kinks here and there along the way, but it was good to me trying something new and being productive instead of just feeling sorry for myself. And so, here I was constantly evolving just to make this method better. And again, some setbacks, but I was on the right track anyway. And suddenly my confidence and my momentum from these interviews were slowly but surely pulling out of my dark place. I was doing something I never dreamed I could do. And speaking to foreign players I had watched and admired for years. And here I was, listening to stories and conversing with them. Never ever did I think that I would be speaking with them, but here I was, and I loved it. So, that momentum carried me to do this on a regular basis. not just for this particular series, but just more stories down the road. Heck, even during the COVID lockdown last year, I mean, the lockdown took an emotional toll on me, as I'm sure it did on a lot of people. But I decided to take advantage of that, reach out to as many people as I could think of, and spoke with some great people, listened to some great stories, and wrote some great pieces on it, and I loved it. I mean, I had to stop to imagine how things had been had I just resorted to the notion of too bad I stutter and gave up. Because, I mean, I'll tell you one thing: I sure as anything wouldn't be here. But yeah, so whenever I reflect on that, I'm very proud. But yeah, whatever was inside me urging me just to try, I'm happy that it did, that I went with that instinct. May not have felt like much at the time, but I hung in there and kept going. And in hindsight, I wouldn't have it any other way. And some interviews didn't go as well as I hoped, and some declined my request, but that's inevitable. Overall, though, I mean, I will do that. I will do what I did all over again, and more or less the same way if given the opportunity. Now, I am part of a great writing team. I am the co-editor of a startup Kings-related news site called HockeyRoyalty.com, which in recent months has been garnering a lot of critical attention. I mean, and another accomplishment this year, I had the privilege of writing and publishing my own book, which as you can see is all the right words, my journey as a sportswriter who stutters. And for those hockey fans, the foreword is written by former NHL goaltender, thank you, Eva, Eddie Lack. And I reached out to Mr. Lack earlier this year because it turns out he is also a person that stutters, which I did not know. And I reached out, and we hit it off right away. And he was honored to write my foreword, and I was honored to have him write it. So yeah, and by the way, it is $9.99 Canadian on Amazon. The price went down, so for those people who spent $17.99 Canadian, I do apologize. No, all joking aside, though, I mean, had you told me even 3 years ago that I'd be a published author by now, I wouldn't have laughed at you, but I would have dismissed it and not given a second thought. But I am proud of what I've done and what I've accomplished, especially especially during the COVID lockdown, which honestly really helped shift my perspective on so many different things, giving me a new appreciation for so many different things. And I'm sure I can speak for a lot of people here and beyond when I say mentally the lockdown was difficult. But I knew that I had to do something to keep busy. And what better way to do that than by doing what I love? My wife Shannon, to my brother Adam, Kingsman, to plethora of friends and family members. I am lucky, fortunate enough to have such a solid support system. Having those encouraged me to try new things. Some suggestions I may not have taken as seriously, but others I did, and I tried them. And in some cases, found success as a result. Now, take it from me. Heck, take it from anyone who has either grown up as a person who stutters. It is no fun being dismissed. It is no fun being ignored. Definitely no fun being teased or mocked, and it is no fun being taken seriously. fact, to heck with no fun. It's awful. It sucks. All of it does. But just remember that adversity, adversity is never immune to opportunity. To use a sports metaphor, critics can dismiss you for losing a few games or for giving up a go-ahead goal late in the game in terms of hockey. But deep down, you know exactly what you're made of, and you know exactly what you're capable of. So you know what? Use your opportunities to leave those critics with their jaws to the floor, with their eyes open in utter amazement. I mean that figuratively, but if you can do that literally, all the power to you. But no, you know, even if you don't get that reaction from critics, who cares? Prove the worth of your character and your resilience to yourself. That alone is worth it. Now, will I continue my sports writing career? You bet I will. Will I be writing another book? Without question, I will. When that'll happen, I don't know. But not every day is going to be a good one. And not every opportunity is going to be a promising one. But if you can get out of bed and make an effort to the best of your ability and whatever heart desires, then you already have more courage and more bravery than you give yourself credit for. Remember that. Will you get your due right away? Maybe not. I mean, I sure as heck didn't. But make that effort anyway, because you will. Because you will get that due. Whether it's tomorrow, next week, a few years from now, you will. Take this from someone who continues his long battle with depression and social anxiety. It is worth it. A few years ago, when I looked down in that bridge wanting to jump, or when I looked down at my palm full of pills, there was a voice, a faint whisper granted, but a voice nonetheless, deep down telling me and urging me to keep going and keep fighting. And I did, and I'm very happy and proud of that. So here I am, still fighting, still writing, and of course, I'm still stuttering. And I'm happier, more successful now than I've been in my entire life. Now, going back to my book, for those wanting a copy, to buy a copy of my book, and for those who have, thank you very much. I appreciate your support. But those who want to buy a book, you can find it on Amazon in Canada, the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. So, to everyone, to my listeners, to my fellow speakers, to the Canadian Stuttering Association, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I wish you all nothing but the best. Thank you very much.
Woo! Ryan, thanks
Yes.
to you for your wonderful talk here today. I'm going to stop the recording.